Hello. It's time to let go of all the burdens of today. Let your body sink deep into the soft bed. Today, we will listen together to a story about Buddhist teachings on turning failure into a lesson for growth. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and exhale slowly. Don't try to think, just relax. Welcome to Lotus Whisper. Tonight, we turn our attention to a feeling we all know intimately, the sting of disappointment, the quiet echo of failure. It is a moment when the world seems to pause, and a cold hand of judgment rests upon our chest. We often see failure as a final verdict, a proof of inadequacy, or a hard barrier. But tonight, let us gently challenge this perception. Within the ancient wisdom of the Buddhist and Zen traditions, there are no failures, only lessons unfolding. The path to enlightenment, to true growth, is not a straight and easy line. It is a winding river, full of falls and unexpected turns. Each setback is merely a teacher in heavy disguise, pointing the way to a deeper truth about the self and the world. We will explore how to release the heavy weight of self-blame, how to separate the event that passed from the person who remains, and how to use the very sensation of falling to propel us higher. Let your muscles soften. Let the tension in your jaw dissolve. Allow the quiet power of these ancient stories to wash over you, soothing the mind and preparing the body for deep rest. Just breathe. Inhale peace. Exhale all that is done. If you find solace in these quiet reflections, please subscribe to Lotus Whisper to hear more gentle stories that guide you toward rest and inner peace. Part 1. The Shadow of Expectation. We begin our journey tonight by observing the nature of suffering itself, particularly the suffering that arises when we perceive a failure. In the Dharma, there is a teaching about the first arrow and the second arrow. This is perhaps the most gentle yet profoundly liberating insight one can receive when the heart is heavy with disappointment. The first arrow is the inevitable pain of life. It is the loss, the mistake, the unforeseen circumstance, the project that collapsed, the relationship that frayed, the illness that appeared. It is the objective event itself. This pain is unavoidable. It is the raw experience of being human in an impermanent world. Imagine a young Zen student named Jiro. Jiro had spent 3 years meticulously cultivating a small, delicate garden in the monastery courtyard. He had chosen every stone, pruned every bush, and perfected the pattern of raked sand. His entire identity, he felt, was tied up in the flawless beauty of this garden. One blustery autumn night, a sudden, violent storm swept through the valley. When Jiro awoke, he found his precious garden devastated. The stones were scattered, the sand was churned into mud, and the delicate bushes were stripped bare. The physical sight of the destroyed garden, the immediate sharp ache in his chest, that was the first arrow. It was the unavoidable consequence of wind, rain, and the nature of things. Jiro wept, but not just from the loss of the garden. He wept because immediately after the first pang of sadness came the terrible inner monologue. I am a poor gardener. I am a failure. 3 years of effort were wasted. I should have built a better shelter. I should have chosen a safer spot. This proves I am not worthy to be a student. This internal voice, this layer of self-judgment, self-criticism, and clinging to the perfect idea of the garden, this is the second arrow. The first arrow we cannot avoid. But the second arrow we fire at ourselves, and this is where true, prolonged suffering resides. The Buddha taught that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And the choice lies in whether or we pick up that second arrow, the arrow of resistance and attachment, and pierce ourselves again. Think back now to your own experience of what you call a failure. Feel the memory gently. What was the first arrow? Was it a financial setback, a mistake in a conversation, a missed goal, a physical limitation? Now, notice the second arrow that followed. What did you say to yourself? What story did your mind immediately attach to the event? I am stupid. I am careless. I will never be good enough. Breathe with this realization. The physical collapse of Jiro's garden was sad, but his suffering was the emotional collapse of the idea of Jiro, the perfect gardener. He was attached not just to the plants, but to the identity that the successful garden provided him. This clinging to an expected outcome is the root of the second arrow. We set an expectation, a mental picture of success, and when reality deviates from that picture, we suffer the mismatch. We feel as if reality itself has betrayed us, when in truth, we have only betrayed our own rigid, fragile expectation. The wisdom here is simple, yet profound. When an event causes you pain, the first arrow, stop. Do not allow the mind to leap to the conclusion that you, the entire being, are defined by this momentary outcome. Separate the action from the actor. Jiro's master, who had watched the whole painful process, walked out to the ruined courtyard the next morning. Jiro, weeping, waited for a reprimand. The master simply bent down, picked up a wet, scattered stone, and placed it back among the mud. Jiro, he said, his voice as soft as the mist. The wind does not ask your permission to blow. The rain does not consult your schedule to fall. The garden is impermanent. Your effort was pure. That is the success. The outcome is not your possession. Your suffering now is not from the mud, but from the shadow of the perfect garden you carry in your mind. The failure is a gift, Jiro. It cleans the slate of your pride. Now, we begin again, knowing more about the nature of the wind. The master did not tell Jiro that the garden was fine. It was clearly destroyed. He acknowledged the truth of the moment, the first arrow. But he immediately offered the path of release. Let go of the shadow of expectation. Let go of the attachment to the identity of success, and recognize the profound value in the effort itself. This detachment is not apathy. It is not resignation. It is a profound, active love for reality as it is. It is the understanding that the moment we label something a failure, we stop learning. We freeze the process. We draw a final, heavy line. But the truth of the universe is that the line is always being erased by the next wave of change. The wind that destroyed the garden will eventually dry the mud, and new seeds will find a way into the soil. Tonight, let us practice this gentle separation. Feel the event, the first arrow. Acknowledge it with a soft breath. Yes, this happened. This is the condition of things. Then, watch for the second arrow, the harsh voice of the internal critic, and simply do not pick it up. Allow the hand that holds the arrow to relax and open. The disappointment will be a passing cloud, not a stone monument to your flaws. True growth comes not from avoiding the first arrow, but from refusing to fire the second. In this quiet refusal, the deep peace of acceptance begins to unfold. Let the image of the old Zen master gently rearranging the stone in the mud settle into your mind. There is no urgency, no blame, only the steady, quiet work of starting anew, right here, right now. Let your hands relax. Let your feet be heavy. Let the worry about the things that did not work out today drift away. All of it is simply data, information for the next moment of effort. The only failure is the refusal to learn. The only suffering is the resistance to what is. Just breathe, softly, deeply. Part 2. The impermanent seed of success. Now that we have gently observed the pain of the second arrow, the self-inflicted wound of expectation, we turn to one of the most fundamental truths of the Dharma, anicca, the truth of impermanence. This teaching is not meant to be a bleak reminder of loss, but a deep source of solace and freedom, particularly when confronting what we call failure. Failure is, at its core, a judgment made about a moment in time. When we declare an event a failure, we are trying to stop the flow of time and freeze a single outcome. We are attempting to make a transient mistake permanent, attaching an absolute label to something that is, by nature, constantly shifting. Consider the life of a great Zen master, whose name has been lost to the mist of history, but whose teaching remains in the quiet tradition. He was known for his mastery of calligraphy, his strokes holding the weight of mountains and the lightness of a passing cloud. Yet, it took him decades to achieve this. In his youth, he worked tirelessly to perfect a single character, the character for truth. He would grind the ink, prepare the finest paper, clear his mind, and execute the stroke. Every morning he would hang his finished work in the sun. Every evening his master would examine it, offer a quiet shake of the head and say, "Not yet." For 10 years this was his ritual. He produced thousands of attempts. Each one in his mind was a failure. He had failed to capture the essence of truth. The pile of discarded paper grew higher than his sleeping mat. One evening, exhausted and disheartened, he decided he could not bear the weight of the ink brush any longer. He stood before the master, tears in his eyes, ready to confess his final failure, the failure to persevere. The master, instead of listening, simply took the apprentice's most recent failed attempt and hung it on the wall. He then gestured to the immense stack of previous efforts, now yellowed with time. "Look at this pile, my son," the master instructed gently. "You see failures. I see the record of 1,000 mornings of effort. Each piece of paper you abandoned was merely a moment. Do you see the one I just hung?" The student looked up at the character for truth he had just painted. A stroke he felt was heavy and clumsy. "Tell me," the master continued, "is that stroke the same as the stroke you painted 5 years ago?" "No, master. That first one was rigid, anxious. This one is more relaxed, though still imperfect." "And the one from 3 years ago?" "It had energy, but no center. This one has a small bit of center." The master smiled. "Then where is the failure? Where is the permanent, fixed failure?" The one from 5 years ago was a failure only in the light of the one from 3 years ago. The one from 3 years ago was a failure only in the light of the one from yesterday. You have been judging the unripened fruit by the standard of the harvest that has not yet come. The truth of anicca, impermanence, means that not only does the mistake itself fade, but the state of being that led to the mistake also fades. The rigidity, the anxiety, the lack of skill, the misunderstanding, these are all temporary conditions. The person who made the mistake yesterday is already gone. You are a new person in this moment, carrying the memory of the past, but not bound by its limitations. When we feel the weight of failure, we are often holding on to the belief that the past outcome somehow determines the future potential. This is like watching a single frame of a long movie and declaring the entire story finished. But life, the Buddha taught, is a continuous, moment-to-moment arising. The moment of failure is simply a point on the continuous curve of practice. If you step back and observe it through the lens of impermanence, it loses its terrible finality. The financial loss, the marketplace is always in flux. Tomorrow, new opportunities will arise. The argument, the emotions that flared were impermanent, like a fire that consumed itself. The relationship has new air to breathe in the morning. The artistic creation that fell short. The vision of the artist is growing. The hands and the eye learn something new with every clumsy attempt. This is the power of seeing failure as a seed. A seed must first appear to fail in its current form. It must break apart, dissolve, and surrender its rigid shape before the sprout can emerge. The destruction of the seed is a necessary step for the larger form to manifest. Tonight, let us practice seeing ourselves not as a finished product that failed, but as a continuous process. You are not a painting, but a brushstroke, and the next stroke is always available to you, unmarred by the one that came before. Allow yourself to relax into this idea of constant transformation. The self that struggled, the self that fell short, the self that judged, that self is already fading, dissolving into the quiet past. Breathe deeply, letting the chest expand and soften. With every exhalation, release the attachment to the identity of the person who failed. That person is a ghost of a past moment. You are here now, awake, breathing, and ready to absorb the lesson without the pain of the judgment. The success of the next moment is already contained within the learning of the last. The master finally told the student, "The pile of paper is not a monument to your failures. It is a record of your dedication to anicca." You see, the truth is not one final perfect stroke. The truth is the 10,000 changes that led to the next stroke. Embrace the flow. There is no finish line, only the steady, gentle movement of the practice. Let your body sink deeper into the comfort beneath you. Let the anxieties of fixed outcomes and rigid expectations float away, knowing that even they are merely transient thoughts, already on their way out to sea. You are free to begin anew with the next gentle breath. Letting go of the self-failure. Let us now move from the concept of impermanence to the equally liberating concept of anatta, or non-self. This is a profound shift in perspective, one that completely disarms the crippling self-judgment that follows a perceived failure. When a mistake occurs, our mind often instinctively equates the event with the identity. We do not say, "The attempt failed." Instead, we say, "I am a failure." This conflation, This binding of an action to the whole being is the source of great mental suffering. The teaching of anatta invites us to see that the person who experienced the setback is not a fixed, solid entity that can be permanently labeled. Imagine a renowned Zen master named Hakuin Ekaku. Though this particular story is attached to an even older, less famous figure, preserved through the generations for its simple wisdom. In a remote village lived a master who was universally respected for his deep serenity and clear teaching. He lived in a simple hut, teaching those who came to him with questions about the way. One day, a wealthy merchant from a nearby city, curious about the master's wisdom, sent a messenger to him. The merchant had recently suffered a massive public loss in business, a failure so complete that he felt his entire life was ruined. He sought the master's advice. The master listened patiently to the messenger recount the merchant's tragedy, the failed ventures, the betrayal by partners, the loss of standing in the community. The master smiled and simply instructed the messenger, "Tell your master this. The one who succeeded is not the one who failed." The messenger, puzzled, returned to the merchant with this peculiar phrase. The merchant, sitting in the ashes of his defeat, initially dismissed it. "Of course, I am the one who failed. I made the decisions. I bore the loss. I am one person." But the phrase was sticky. It lingered in the quiet chambers of his mind. He began to reflect softly. 5 years ago, he had embarked on a project that brought him enormous success. His ego had swelled. He walked with confidence, perhaps bordering on arrogance. That successful man, full of self-importance, eager for praise, and convinced of his own permanent cleverness. Was that the same man who now sat here, broken, humbled, and finally ready to look at his own flaws? The successful merchant of 5 years ago was driven by a certain set of desires, a particular kind of energy, and an attachment to a certain outcome. The humbled man sitting now was different. He had lost his arrogance. He felt the pain, but within the pain a new quiet curiosity was beginning to stir. What did I truly learn from this? He was stripped of the very ego that the first success had built up. He realized the master's words were a koan, a profound puzzle designed to crack open the rigid shell of his fixed identity. The successful self was defined by attachment to gain. The failing self was defined by attachment to loss. Both were mere constructs, temporary appearances on the stage of his life. Anatta teaches us that the self is an ever-changing collection of physical forms, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Just as a river is not the same water from one moment to the next, you are not the same person from one decision to the next. When we cling to the idea of a fixed I, we allow a mistake made by the I of yesterday to inflict suffering on the I of today. We allow a temporary imperfection to define an eternal soul. But the truth is, the successful self who took the praise and the failing self who absorbs the blame are both fleeting moments in the continuous stream of being. To embrace anatta in the context of failure means to practice a radical act of separation. Acknowledge the action. A mistake was made. The endeavor did not yield the desired result. Release the identity. Do not follow this with, "Therefore I am flawed." Embrace the learning. The I who now exists has the knowledge gained from that specific experience. This approach turns a judgment into a lesson. The moment you stop saying, "I am a failure," and start saying, "That action failed, and now I know why," you move from a stagnant, painful state of being to an active, dynamic state of learning. This gentle detachment allows the energy that was bound up in self-reproach to be redirected towards clear-sighted observation. You can finally look back at the failed event with the gentle curiosity of an observer, rather than the fierce protective pain of the participant. The merchant, having pondered the koan for weeks, finally returned to the master's hut. He bowed deeply. "Master," he said, "I understand. The one who succeeded was blinded by his own light. The one who failed is now seeing clearly in the darkness." The master simply nodded. "Then, which one are you now?" The merchant paused, then smiled, a quiet peace settling over his face. "I am neither. I am the silence between the words. I am the man who rises this morning, unburdened by the tales of the past, ready to use the clarity gained by both success and loss. This is the freedom of anatta. You are not the label. You are the awareness that perceives the label. When you release the need for a permanent, perfect self, you also release the fear of a permanent, flawed self. The identity of failure is just as much an illusion as the identity of perfection. Both are temporary stories. Let the sensation of your body relaxing become your anchor to the present moment. The failures of the day, the week, or the past year, let them become detached events like leaves floating on a wide river. You are the shore, unchanging and vast, observing the flow, but never swept away by it. Rest in this understanding. You are not defined by any single outcome. You are the continuous, dynamic capacity for growth. Let the old, rigid story of the self dissolve into the silence. Part 4. The Gift of the Broken Vessel. As we sink deeper into rest, we contemplate a critical piece of the Buddhist path that turns personal setbacks outward, the Bodhisattva's vow. While the previous sections focused on internal release, letting go of the ego and the burden of self-blame, this practice focuses on transforming failure into a fuel for compassion and collective growth. The Bodhisattva is one who vows to postpone their own final enlightenment until all sentient beings are freed from suffering. This vow is incredibly demanding, and it requires a continuous, open-hearted willingness to engage with the world, knowing that mistakes are inevitable. Consider the old, quiet tale of a monk named Kenshin, whose greatest dream was to become a master ceramicist, creating vessels of perfect beauty for use in the temple rituals. Kenshin possessed talent, but he lacked patience. His desire for perfection was so fierce that it bordered on arrogance. He wanted to leap to mastery without enduring the necessary steps of practice. He would work for days on a single, intricate bowl, envisioning its flawless finish. But time and again, when the vessel was fired in the kiln, a hairline crack would appear, or the glaze would run unevenly. He would take the ruined vessel and smash it to pieces in a fury of frustration. Failure, failure, failure. He could not bear the sight of his own imperfection. One year, a famine struck the region. The monastery, though sheltered, still felt the pinch. People in the nearby villages were hungry, and there was a shortage of containers to store and transport the meager grain they managed to gather. Kenshin had just pulled another failure from the kiln, a large, sturdy jar intended for preserving tea, but which had warped badly on one side, making it impossible to seal properly. It was structurally sound, but aesthetically ruined. He raised the hammer to shatter it when his master gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Wait, Kenshin," the master said, pointing to the warp side. "You see this as a failure because it cannot hold the perfect tea. But can it hold the coarse grain for the hungry ones down the path?" Kenshin hesitated. He saw his work only through the rigid lens of his high personal standard. "Master, it is ugly. It is imperfect. It is not worthy of the temple." "Perfection," the master whispered, "is often a barrier to usefulness. You cling to the idea of the flawless vessel for yourself, but the people need a vessel that merely holds. The crack that makes it unworthy for your tea ceremony makes it perfectly suited to teach you compassion." Kenshin finally saw the flaw not as a symbol of his inadequacy, but as a defining feature that made the vessel humble, rugged, and ready for the harsh, real needs of the world. He stopped smashing his failed pieces. He found that the pieces he considered failures, the warped mugs, the rough bowls, the chipped plates, were the most useful to the common people. They were strong, unpretentious, and their very imperfections meant no one worried about breaking them. This is the great lesson of the broken vessel and the Bodhisattva's path. When we face our own failure, we often feel isolated, unworthy, and deeply flawed. We want to hide our brokenness. But the moment we stop judging ourselves and look outward, we realize something astonishing. Our failures are the very things that connect us to the suffering of others. Your struggle with financial loss allows you to speak to another's fear with authentic empathy. Your failure in a relationship teaches you the tenderness needed to truly listen when a friend's relationship collapses. Your artistic setback gives you the humility to encourage a novice who is struggling with their first attempts. The broken parts of your vessel are not meant to be hidden. They are the grooves through which the river of compassion can flow. Think of the energy you expend fighting and judging your own past errors. Now, imagine redirecting that same energy, the focus, the analysis, the deep feeling, outward. Use your own pain as a detailed map for understanding the pain of the world. Your dukkha, suffering, becomes a universal textbook. Your anatta, non-self, perspective, allows you to serve others without the need for personal reward. The Bodhisattva's vow is not about achieving perfect success. It is about perfect practice, which includes the continuous cycle of falling, rising, learning, and serving. The master ceramicist who never broke a bowl would never know the true resilience of the clay, nor the true value of a simple rugged vessel to a desperate person. Let the image of Kenshin's warped jar settle into your mind. It is a symbol of all our imperfections, yet it is utterly useful. It fulfilled its purpose not by being purpose, but by being present and strong in its brokenness. Tonight, let us release the need to be the flawless, shining artifact. Instead, embrace the gentle truth that your very failures have carved out a space of deep, authentic understanding within you. This is a gift you can offer the world. Let your hands unclench. Let your shoulders relax away from your ears. Breathe into the space around your heart, allowing the warmth of self-compassion to fill the places where self-criticism once reigned. You are a vessel of practice, and your imperfections are the marks of a beautiful, evolving process. Rest now, unburdened by the weight of perfection, and simply be strong in your beautiful, useful brokenness. part of a fall, as the mind settles and the body grows heavy with rest, we turn our attention to the practice of the middle way. This ancient teaching is the Buddha's essential guide to navigating life without falling into destructive extremes. It is particularly valuable when we are recovering from a painful mistake, or what we define as a failure. When failure hits, the natural human reaction often pulls us toward two extremes, both of which deepen suffering. The extreme of self-flagellation, asceticism. This is the path of excessive blame, harsh self-criticism, and punishing ourselves. We become rigid, believing we must now work harder, suffer more, or deny ourselves comfort to atone for the mistake. This leads to burnout, paralysis, and a loss of joy in the practice. The extreme of denial, indulgence. This is the path of completely avoiding the pain in the lesson. We distract ourselves, refuse to look closely at what happened, or seek immediate comfort to numb the sting. This leads to repeating the same mistakes and a failure to truly learn. The middle way is the path of gentle, clear-sighted correction. It recognizes that true growth comes not from extremes, but from a balanced, sustained effort fueled by right understanding and right effort. Imagine a master potter named Ritsu who lived near the capital. He was famous not for his most beautiful works, but for his ability to repair his mistakes. If a student broke a pot or ruined a glaze, the student would often be consumed by shame. One day, a new ambitious apprentice named Taro accidentally overfired a batch of 20 small, beautiful teacups, leaving them brittle and useless. Taro was distraught. He immediately swore to the master that he would work non-stop for the next week, sleeping only 3 hours a night to remake the entire batch. He believed this harsh penance was the only way to prove his worth. This was the extreme of self-flagellation. Master Ritsu watched Taro's rigid determination for a day, and then called him over. "Taro," the master said, holding one of the ruined cups, "the fire has already done its work. Do you believe that punishing your body and mind will somehow unfire the clay?" Taro, humbled, shook his head. "No, master, but I must punish myself for my carelessness." "Carelessness is a lesson, not a crime," the master corrected gently. "The middle way is not the path of punishment. It is the path of clarity. When you are exhausted and your mind is clouded by guilt, you will only make the next 20 cups with the same tension and the same mistake. You will perpetuate the failure." Master Ritsu then pointed to the other extreme. "Nor must you forget this loss immediately, pretending it did not happen. That would be the extreme of denial, where you waste the hard-won knowledge the fire has given you." The master then outlined the middle way for him. Acknowledge the pain without judging the self. Feel the regret, but do not judge the character of Taro. The cup broke because of the temperature setting, not because Taro is a flawed person. Right understanding. Rest and restore balance. Go and sleep your full hours tonight. Eat well. Your body needs balance to maintain the steady practice. Analyze the event with detachment. Tomorrow, with a rested and clear mind, you will spend 2 hours calmly recording exactly what happened. The fuel used, the reading of the thermometer, the duration of the heat. You will study the clay and the kiln, not your own shortcomings. Right mindfulness. Implement gentle, sustained correction. Then, and only then, will you begin to mix the new batch, adjusting the process based on your clear analysis. Your effort must be sustained, but never strained. Right effort. The lesson here is that failure creates an immediate imbalance, and our tendency is to correct that imbalance with an equal and opposite force of self-recrimination. But the middle way teaches us that the only true path forward is to return to equilibrium. When you fail, your energy becomes chaotic. To move forward, you need stillness, not frenzy. You need gentle analysis, not emotional reaction. Let this gentle truth wash over you now. If you feel the sting of a fall, do not leap up in a panic. Do not lie down in despair. Instead, pause. Are you being too harsh on yourself? Soften your internal language. Are you distracting yourself from the lesson? Turn gently and observe the facts. The middle way is a continuous act of self-tuning, like adjusting the strings of a lute, not too tight that they snap, and not too loose that they make no sound. The perfect tension is found in the middle, a place of sustained, mindful, and peaceful effort. Rest in the balance tonight. Allow your mind to drift away from the harsh inner voice of punishment. Allow your muscles to release the tension of hurried effort. You have fallen, but you have also gained priceless data. The path is simply to rise with clear eyes and a rested body, ready to apply the small, precise adjustment that the mistake has revealed. There is no need for grand gestures or dramatic penance, just the quiet, steady breath of the middle way. Part 6. The Empty Hand of Effort. As your breathing deepens and the world outside begins to recede, let us explore the profound teaching of non-attachment, upadana, specifically non-attachment to the outcome of our actions. This is the cornerstone of turning failure from a crushing burden into a simple, useful piece of information. When we embark on any project, goal, or relationship, we instinctively divide the world into two parts: our effort and the result. We pour ourselves entirely into the effort, but often the bulk of our mental and emotional energy is spent clinging to the desired result. When the result fails to materialize as we wished, we feel the sharp pain of loss because we treated the outcome as our possession. The wisdom of the Dharma reminds us of the universal law of conditionality. No outcome is ever solely determined by a single person's effort. Every result is conditioned by countless forces outside our control: the weather, the economy, the actions of others, the shifting circumstances of the universe, and the ripening of past karma. Imagine an old Zen farmer named Ichiro. For 50 years, Ichiro had cultivated the same rice paddy. He was known for his patience and his quiet dedication. Year after year, he performed all the necessary actions. He prepared the soil perfectly, selected the finest seeds, meticulously managed the water, and kept the weeds at bay. His effort was faultless, yet one year the harvest was meager. A sudden, unexpected blight swept through the valley, weakening the stalks just before the grain was ready. Ichiro lost nearly half his crop. His neighbor Kenji, who was a much younger farmer, came to Ichiro's hut, weeping with frustration and rage. Kenji had also suffered heavy losses. "Ichiro-san," Kenji cried, "we did everything right. We worked harder than anyone. We deserved a great harvest. This is a complete failure, an injustice. All that effort was wasted." Ichiro listened quietly, then pointed to his own bowl of thin rice gruel. "Look at this bowl, Kenji. Is the effort of preparing the soil choosing the seed, and managing the water truly contained in this meager meal. Kinji shook his head. No, the effort is gone. Only the disappointing result remains. Ichiro gently smiled. You are mistaken, Kinji. The effort is never contained in the result. The effort is contained in the action itself. When you prepared the soil, you were a diligent farmer. When you managed the water, you were a mindful steward. That quality of being, that dedication in the moment, is the only true success you ever possessed. He continued, his voice soft as rustling silk. The harvest, the final result, is a gift from the universe, conditioned by 1,000 forces you cannot control. You cling to the idea that the universe owes you a perfect harvest because you exerted perfect effort. This is the source of your suffering. The teaching is that we must strive with all our heart and mind. We must pour forth pure, sustained effort, but we must hold the outcome with an empty hand. When you hold the outcome with an open, empty hand, and the result is not what you wished, you have lost nothing of value. The effort itself remains an achievement. The practice was completed. The learning was absorbed. If you attach your sense of self-worth, your definition of success, to the unpredictable final result, you hand over your peace to chaos. You become vulnerable to the blight, the unexpected market crash, the fickle opinions of others. But if you attach your worth to the quality of your presence, your focus, your dedication in the process, then you are always successful, even when the outcome appears to be a failure. Think of your failure today. Was your effort sincere? Was your intention pure? Did you learn something profound in the process, even if the result was bitter? If the answers are yes, then the failure is merely the universe offering you feedback, a data point about the conditions outside your control. It is not a judgment on you. When you give your best effort and the result is disappointing, simply acknowledge the impermanence of the situation. Take the lesson, and with an empty hand, let go of the disappointment of the outcome. Like the farmer Ichiro, you have cultivated diligence, patience, and skill. Those are your true, enduring possessions. The harvest is merely the temporary appearance of things. Let the worries about future results and the attachments to past outcomes now dissolve from your mind. Feel the simple, profound peace of knowing that your value lies in your pure presence and your gentle, steady effort. You are free from the need to control. Breathe in. Feel the strength of your own quiet focus. Breathe out. Release the need for any specific reward. Rest in the success of your ongoing practice. The echoes of past karma. As you drift closer to sleep, let us contemplate how the profound Buddhist concept of karma addresses the acute pain of failure. This understanding offers one of the deepest forms of release from blame, shifting our perspective from viewing failure as a crushing punishment to seeing it instead as a precise, predictable, and ultimately helpful feedback mechanism. In the popular Western consciousness, the idea of karma is often simplified into a rigid, cosmic system of instant reward and punishment. If something bad happened, I must have done something bad, and now I am being punished. This black and white, simplistic interpretation, however, breeds crushing guilt and despair when we encounter a major setback. It paralyzes the mind with the heavy burden of moral judgment, leading us to believe we are somehow cosmically flawed, irreparably damaged, or inherently unworthy of success. The subtle, nuanced truth of the Dharma is that karma simply means action, the universal, impersonal law of cause and effect. It is a vast, interconnected, and highly complex web of conditions. Every current circumstance, every result we encounter, whether a great success or a bitter failure, is the ripening of countless seeds planted in the past, by ourselves, and by the actions of the world around us. This ripening is never simple or single-sourced. It is a complex tapestry of conditions, interwoven across immense spans of time. Imagine a master potter named Genshin. He noticed that one particular batch of clay, which he had sourced from a new, untried riverbank, consistently resulted in pots that were brittle and prone to cracking, regardless of how perfectly he shaped and fired them. The pots seemed to contain a hidden flaw that only revealed itself under the intense, transformative heat of the kiln. His student, Daiichi, was working with this new batch, and after several weeks of continuous breakage, became utterly demoralized. The sight of the cracked vessels, stacked in the corner, filled him with a sinking sense of personal doom and inadequacy. "Master," Daiichi lamented, his voice tight with despair and frustration, "I have been so careful. I am meditating before I even touch the wheel. My shaping is meticulous. My focus is unwavering. I have read all the ancient texts on technique. Yet, the pots keep failing. They break in the kiln with a sound like a small, final judgment on my entire being. I must have terrible karma. I must be destined for incompetence. My past actions, whatever they were, are now actively destroying my present effort, mocking my dedication and my resolve." Daiichi felt the heavy weight of self-blame, convinced that the fault lay entirely in some deep, unchangeable, personal moral defect. He had personalized the failure, turning an objective, technical event into a subjective condemnation of his inner worth. This feeling, this sinking conviction of being fundamentally flawed, is often the deepest suffering failure can inflict. It is the ego desperately seeking a single, fixed point of reference to hold on to, even if that reference point is self-hatred. Master Genshin listened patiently, allowing the student's emotional storm to run its course. He knew that any intellectual explanation offered too soon would be lost in the noise of Daiichi's self-recrimination. He waited for a moment of quiet before acting. Then, he gently led Daiichi out of the workshop, away from the dust and the heat of broken clay, down to the riverbank where the clay had been dug. He showed the student how the new clay was mixed with certain mineral deposits, tiny, almost invisible inclusions of iron and mica that made it fundamentally unstable and explosive when subjected to the high heat required for that particular style of glaze. "Daiichi," the master explained, his voice low and calm, "your effort, your intention, and your skill is pure. You have planted good seeds in your mind and in your hands. The failures you see are not a celestial judgment on your character, but a ripening of the clay's condition. The clay has been sitting by the river for centuries, absorbing certain minerals. That is its karma, its past action. The result you see now is merely the perfect and impersonal response of the kiln to the clay's history. It is a material truth, not a moral one. The kiln does not hate you. It merely reflects the ingredients you placed within it." The master then emphasized the core lesson. When failure appears, do not look for moral blame. Look for precise causes and conditions. This shift is the essence of true wisdom. Old seeds ripening. The current failure is a result of causes and conditions set in the past. This includes your past efforts, Perhaps a lack of research, a small distraction, a moment of haste. But also countless external factors: the karma of the clay, the market, the weather, the historical context, the shifting actions of others. Accepting this multiplicity of causes instantly releases you from the impossible burden of 100% personal, singular responsibility. It shifts the fundamental question from "why am I bad?" to "what conditions were present?" This is the essence of right understanding in the face of setback. The absence of moral judgment. The law of karma is not a religious decree. It is akin to a natural law, like the law of physics. Gravity does not judge you when you trip. It simply expresses the relationship between mass and force. Similarly, the disappointment you experience is merely the precise, impersonal reaction of reality to a specific set of inputs. It is a neutral transaction. The failure is not a flaw in your soul. It is a flaw in the recipe or the process. When you let go of the need for the universe to be a judge, you can finally see it as a teacher. The kiln, in its merciless heat, is simply giving perfect feedback. Planting new seeds in the present. The true, liberating power of karma is realized now. The failure is not a final state. It is a moment of clear diagnosis. It shows you exactly which seeds, which causes must be changed. Daichi learned that no amount of perfect shaping could overcome the flaw in the clay. His new action, new karma, must be to change the clay source, or learn a new, lower temperature firing technique specifically for that mineral composition. His growth lay not in self-punishment, but in precise reevaluation and skillful means. The enormous energy previously spent on guilt, shame, and self-recrimination is now free to be engaged in creative, calm problem-solving. This redirection of energy is the fundamental act of transforming failure into growth. The interconnectedness of the web. This failure also reminds us that we operate within a vast web of co-arising. Praticca samutpada. Nothing exists independently. The clay's karma affects the potter's karma. The potter's decision affects the vessel's karma. Your personal effort is conditioned by the resources, tools, and social environment you inhabit. Therefore, failure is rarely, if ever, purely personal. By looking at the whole web, the heavy feeling of singular, crushing responsibility dissolves into a sense of interconnected, shared reality. This realization fosters a quiet humility and dramatically reduces the isolating nature of failure. We realize that our setback is part of a larger, systemic lesson. In this light, failure is transformed from a final verdict into a profound gift. It is the universe's most efficient and effective way of teaching you the exact mechanics of cause and effect. It strips away the comforting, but ultimately false belief that simple good intention is enough. It insists on clarity, precision, and understanding of the specific conditions at play. Think now of your own recent failure. Did you fail because of flawed clay, a poor choice of tool, a lack of necessary resource, a deeply ingrained habit you haven't broken yet, a business partner with conflicting values, or simply the unfavorable historical moment you acted in? These are the material or relational conditions, the external karma. Imperfect firing, a mistake in timing, excessive speed, insufficient rest or focus, a moment of pride, or a failure to adapt to changing external heat. These are the conditions of your action, your personal, present karma. Your failure is a perfectly written instruction manual for your next endeavor. It shows you which seeds you planted inadvertently, and which external conditions you did not adequately account for. There is absolutely no need for self-hatred, only the need for attentive, quiet learning and precise adjustment. Let the guilt of the past dissolve completely. It serves no useful purpose and drains the very energy needed for the next effort. Focus only on the present. What new, wholesome action, new karma, can I initiate right now, based on the clarity this hard-won result has provided? This release from self-judgment is deeply restful. You are not a condemned soul. You are simply a conscious gardener, observing the soil, the seeds, and the weather, and choosing the perfect course of action to plant for the next season. The wisdom of the Dharma gently guides you to move from the chaotic, emotional state of blame to the clear, productive state of understanding. Allow your entire body to relax now. The burdens of past mistakes are not meant to be carried forward as heavy baggage. They have delivered their painful yet essential lesson. Allow the quiet understanding of cause and effect to bring a deep sense of peace and clarity. You are free to begin planting anew, wiser, and unburdened by the crushing weight of moral condemnation. Let the stillness of the night absorb all past echoes, leaving only the clarity of the present moment's resolve. A deeper contemplation on the space between cause and effect. Imagine you are standing in a quiet, secluded Zen forest at night. You can hear the sound of the wind sighing through the ancient pine branches. As you inhale, you feel the cool, clean air fill your lungs. As you exhale, you consciously release the scattered thoughts still clinging to your mind. Now, hold that failure you carry gently in your awareness. When you label an event a failure, you are attempting to collapse the infinite distance between cause and effect. You believe you did A, and the immediate, singular result was B. You assume this relationship is instantaneous and direct. But the truth of karma teaches us that there is always a vast, dynamic, and infinite space between cause and result, a space that is filled by countless other conditions. In that space lies time. Everything requires time to ripen. The success that is emerging tomorrow may be the direct result of the effort spent on today's apparent failure. The seed must sit in the darkness before it sprouts. The intentions of others, the decisions of other people, the actions of the marketplace, the shifting tides of human desire. Impermanence, the constantly changing nature of everything, means that the final result can never be perfectly controlled or possessed. The great Zen master Dogen once wrote, "Practice and realization are one." This means the value does not lie in the destination, but in the pure quality of the action itself. When you practice, you are realizing the truth of the present moment. If your effort is delivered with a pure, focused mind, that is the only success that truly exists. The true failure is when you cease your effort, or when you allow the judgment of the outcome to contaminate the purity of your next action. Release the compulsive need to trace a straight line from one specific action to one specific desired result. It is like planting a seed. You cannot force it to sprout on your schedule. You can only provide the perfect conditions: good soil, sufficient water, and warmth. The final result is always a collaboration between your intention and the vast, beautiful unpredictability of the universe. When you accept that everything is co-arising, you realize you are not the lonely judge solely responsible for every imperfection. You are merely one quiet contributor to an oceanic flow. This brings an enormous lightness to the spirit. There is no longer the crushing weight of mandatory perfection. Only the humble, quiet joy of dedicated participation. Breathe deeply into your belly now. Feel the support of the bed beneath you. You do not need to grasp onto anything. The past has delivered its painful, invaluable lesson. The future awaits your newly clarified action. Between the two, there is only the profound, restorative rest of the present moment. Let the wisdom of cause and effect become a warm blanket wrapping around you. It is not a chain of punishment. It is a continuous, intelligent stream of teaching. Be a diligent student, not a desperate prisoner. Just breathe, listen, and rest. Your greatest growth is happening right now in this powerful act of release. Let the wisdom of cause and effect become a warm blanket wrapping around you. It is not a chain of punishment. It is a continuous, intelligent stream of teaching. Be a diligent student, not a desperate prisoner. Just breathe, listen, and rest. Your greatest growth is happening right now in this powerful act of release. The practice of detached observation in failure. To truly integrate the wisdom of karma into our response to failure, we must cultivate the practice of detached observation. This is the core of meditative life applied to everyday setbacks. When the results of your action, a business deal, a difficult conversation, a creative project, fall short, the mind immediately wants to jump into the scene and participate in the ensuing chaos of self-judgment. Detached observation is the skill of remaining in the seat of the silent observer, simply recording the facts without personalizing the event. Imagine you are watching a play on a distant stage. The actors are dramatic, the plot is tense, and the outcome is clearly disappointing for the protagonist. As the observer, you do not leap onto the stage to take the blame for the actor's missed cue or the playwright's clumsy ending. You remain still, taking note of the scene. The timing was off. The prop broke. The lighting was too dim. This is how we must approach our own moments of failure. This practice requires a deliberate withdrawal of emotional energy from the outcome. Instead of thinking, "I messed up the presentation, I am a terrible speaker," the detached observer simply notes, "The slides were confusing. The time allotted was insufficient. My voice wavered at minute 12. By refusing to infuse the event with the fuel of ego, the "I am a failure" narrative, you prevent the first arrow of the setback from attracting the paralyzing, destructive second arrow of self-condemnation. The energy that would have been wasted in guilt and shame is preserved, clean and clear for the next attempt. This is the ultimate economic wisdom of the Dharma. Conserve mental resources by refusing to pay the emotional toll of attachment. The role of gratitude for clarity. It may sound paradoxical, but true acceptance of karma and failure leads to a profound sense of gratitude for clarity. When an endeavor succeeds easily, the lessons are often shallow. Success can blind us. We tend to attribute the result entirely to our own genius, overlooking the vital contributions of luck, timing, and external conditions. This inflated sense of self-agency makes us brittle and unprepared for the inevitable change. Failure, however, is brutally honest. It is a precise surgical tool that cuts away illusion. It forces you to see the flawed clay and the imperfect firing that success happily allowed you to ignore. Be grateful for the financial loss that revealed a critical flaw in your business model that would have caused a larger collapse later. Be grateful for the relationship breakdown that showed you an unhealed pattern of communication that needed addressing. Be grateful for the public mistake that stripped away your professional arrogance and taught you deep humility. Each of these moments of clarity is invaluable karma. It is the universe giving you a map of what not to do, painted in the sharp colors of disappointment. The cost of the lesson, the failure, is often immense, but the clarity gained is the true enduring wealth. This gratitude allows us to reframe the narrative of failure from "what did I lose?" to "what did I gain?" You gain specific, actionable knowledge about the conditions of the world. You gained insight into the mechanics of your own mind. This clarity is the ultimate seed of future, authentic growth. Embracing the dynamic flow of practice. Finally, let the contemplation of karma and failure bring you to a place of deep, dynamic peace. Your life is not a series of fixed tests to be passed or failed. It is a continuous, unfolding practice. In Zen, the tea ceremony is practiced thousands of times. Is a student's 999th ceremony a failure if they spill a drop? No. It is simply the 999th opportunity to learn the exact conditions. The tension in the shoulder, the slight miscalculation of weight, the momentary lapse of sati, mindfulness, that lead to the spill. The spill is integrated into the practice, not separated from it. Tonight, carry this feeling of integration into your rest. Your failures are part of the process, not a final judgment. They have served their purpose by clarifying the way forward. Allow the realization of the law of cause and effect to be the source of your deepest, most tranquil rest. There is no need to worry, only to observe and adjust. Breathe deeply. Release all judgment. Rest in the knowledge that you are a learner and the lesson is complete for this cycle. The new day and the new action awaits a mind unburdened by the echoes of past blame. Humility in the dust. As your mind rests deeply and your body finds its still center, we turn our contemplation toward the virtue of humility, which is often the first and most critical gate on the path of growth after a fall. Failure, in the Buddhist view, is often a necessary spiritual discipline designed to cultivate this very quality. When we experience success, our ego swells, creating a false sense of solidity and self-sufficiency. We begin to think, "I did this. I am clever. I am the cause." This arrogance, mana, is a subtle but potent form of blindness. It closes the mind to new learning and makes us resistant to feedback. The pain of failure, then, is simply the universe's method of breaking down that rigid shell of pride, forcing the dust of arrogance to settle, and making the ground fertile for true wisdom. We often hear the tale of the master and the proud scholar. There was once a young, brilliant monk named Kenji, who was destined for greatness in the scholarly tradition. He had memorized vast amounts of the Buddhist canon, mastered several languages, and could debate complex philosophical points with formidable logic. He was appointed abbot of a small rustic mountain temple while still quite young, a testament to his undeniable intellect. However, Kenji lacked experience and, crucially, lacked genuine humility. He managed the temple with an air of detached superiority, viewing the maintenance, the physical labor, and the simple needs of the lay community as beneath his lofty intellectual pursuits. He often mistook his vast knowledge about the Dharma for actual realization of the Dharma. One evening, a simple elderly monk named Josen, who was revered for his quiet spiritual depth but was completely uneducated by worldly standards, visited Kenji's temple. Kenji received him with formal politeness but with an underlying condescension. During their conversation over tea, Kenji spoke at great length about the complexity of the Yogacara school, the nature of consciousness, and the precise philosophical definition of emptiness. He spoke rapidly, proudly displaying the breadth of his learning. The old monk, Josen, listened quietly, occasionally nodding. When Kenji finally paused, the old monk held his simple, rough ceramic tea bowl and pointed to the steam rising from the hot liquid. "Abbot Kenji," Josen asked, his voice gentle and slow, "you have explained the ultimate nature of things with great clarity. You speak of emptiness, shunyata, as the ground of all being. Tell me, where does the steam go when it dissolves into the air?" Kenji was momentarily stunned. The question was too simple, too direct, too rooted in the physical reality he often disregarded. His mind, trained in abstract logic, raced through philosophical treatises, trying to find the high-level, complex answer. But the plain truth of the steam, a phenomenon of simple impermanence, eluded his intellectual framework. He struggled, stammered, and finally, for the first time in years, admitted, "Master Josen, I do not know." The old monk smiled, not with triumph, but with genuine kindness. "It simply goes. It transforms. It returns to the conditions from which it arose. It does not linger, nor does it ask permission to change. It is simply and perfectly a thing of this world, not of the philosophical scrolls." Kenji realized in that instant that his vast knowledge was like a towering building built upon shaky emotional foundations. His pride had prevented him from seeing the simple, obvious truth right before his eyes. He had been so busy accumulating intellectual success that he had failed to be present with the real, unadorned world. This realization, this moment of admitting, "I do not know," after years of saying, "I know everything," was Kenji's first true failure. It was the collapse of his intellectual ego, and it was the most important step he ever took toward genuine spiritual growth. Humility, born from failure, is not about putting oneself down. It is about seeing oneself accurately, without the distorting lens of ego. It is the realization that your current understanding is always incomplete, and that the simplest person, the most mundane event, or the most obvious mistake can be your greatest teacher. When failure forces you to your knees, it breaks the habit of pride. It creates a space, a clean, empty space, where true learning can enter. The knowledge of the scrolls could not teach Kenji about the steam. Only the humble realization of his own ignorance could. Think now of the mistake you carry. What arrogance did that failure strip away? Was it the pride of control? The belief that if you just tried hard enough, the outcome was guaranteed? Knowledge? The belief that your preparation was sufficient, making you resistant to advice? Identity? The belief that you were defined by a winning streak, making you fear loss more than stagnation. Embrace the dust. The feeling of being humbled is uncomfortable, but it is also cleansing. It washes away the accumulated crust of self-importance that prevents light from entering. The fall teaches you the texture of the ground, and that knowledge is far more valuable than the illusion of flight. The path of the practitioner is one of constant learning, and failure is simply the necessary friction required for refinement. A diamond is only revealed after immense pressure and the stripping away of layers of rough material. Your failures are the refining fire. Tonight, let the feeling of inadequacy be gently transformed into the fertile ground of humility. There is immense peace in knowing that you do not have all the answers. The world, in its infinite wisdom, will always have more to teach you. By accepting your incomplete state, you open yourself fully to the universe's quiet instruction. Relax your mind from the constant pressure of having to be right or having to be perfect. Allow yourself the profound rest that comes from admitting, simply and quietly, I am a student. That admission is the highest form of spiritual strength. The necessity of cracking the shell of self-sufficiency. The journey through what we label as failure is fundamentally a journey into deep self-knowledge, and this knowledge is only accessible through the doorway of humility. The arrogant mind, the mind inflated by past successes and rigid expectations, is like a tightly sealed jar. It can hold its contents, but nothing new can flow in, and its contents cannot truly flow out to connect with the world. Failure is the force that gently but firmly cracks this jar open. Consider the atmosphere within the Zen monastery. The most revered masters often engage in the most humble and mundane tasks, cleaning the latrines, tending the vegetable patch, or simply collecting firewood. This isn't a performance of piety. It is a fundamental, daily practice of humility. It is a continuous rejection of the hierarchical ego, a refusal to believe that one's spiritual station elevates one above the basic reality of dirt, effort, and service. When Kenji, the proud scholar from our earlier story, finally admitted his ignorance about the steam, he did more than just answer a question. He shattered the invisible, intellectual glass wall he had built around himself. The resulting wave of humiliation was not a punishment, but a sudden rush of fresh, cool air. For the first time, he was ready to learn from Josen, the simple monk, because he had lowered himself to the same level, the level of the perpetual student. Humility, in this context, is the prerequisite for Shoshin, or beginner's mind. You cannot possess the beginner's mind if you still believe you are an expert. The sting of failure, therefore, is a powerful tool for cleaning the slate of your accumulated expertise. It strips away the comforting myths. I am too smart to make that mistake. I am too careful to lose that money. I am too good to be left alone. When these myths are revealed as false, the mind is forced back to a state of simple presence, where it can observe the truth of the situation without the filter of pride, the quiet acceptance of limitations. A key aspect of Buddhist growth is understanding and accepting our fundamental limitations. The ego strives for omnipotence, clinging to the illusion of total control over outcomes, other people, and our own inner world. Failure brutally exposes this illusion. The fall teaches us that we are bound by anicca, impermanence, and anatta, non-self. We cannot permanently hold on to success, and we cannot perfectly control the conditions of co-arising karma. True humility is the quiet, powerful acceptance of these truths. It is the ability to look at a devastating mistake and say, without self-pity or anger, "This is what happened. This is my limitation under these specific conditions. Now I know the boundaries of my skill." This acceptance is not resignation. It is precise knowledge. A mountaineer who fails to reach a summit due to a sudden storm does not rail against the sky. They humbly accept the unyielding conditions of the mountain. They study the failure, the inadequate gear, the misread forecast, the flawed pacing, and return to base camp, not broken, but wiser, with a newfound respect for the mountain's power. Their humility becomes their strongest tool. In your own life, the failure you experienced is merely a map marking the boundary of your current capacity. It is a gift that says, "This is where your present knowledge ends. Your next step must begin here, with this specific, localized ignorance." Humility is the willingness to stand at that boundary and look honestly at the terrain you have not yet mastered. The ethical dimension of humbled action. Beyond personal growth, humility born from failure has a profound ethical and social dimension, which is critical to the bodhisattva path. A person who has never experienced a significant failure often lacks the depth of empathy required for true compassion. They judge others' struggles from a high, detached perch of supposed superiority. They mistake the suffering of others as evidence of moral or intellectual weakness. But the person who has been humbled by a genuine fall, who has felt the hot sting of public shame or the cold weight of private loss, gains an immediate, authentic connection to the suffering of all beings. They have walked in the dust. They now know, not intellectually but viscerally, that misfortune is universal, and that simple effort does not guarantee success. This hard-won humility translates into gentle action. When you lead or interact with others from a place of genuine humility, you are less likely to demand impossible perfection, less likely to harshly judge mistakes, and more likely to lead with patience, generosity, and loving kindness. Metta. The master Kenji, after his humbling moment, completely transformed his leadership. He spent less time debating texts and more time listening to the concerns of the lay people. He stopped criticizing his junior monks' slow progress and started working alongside them in the garden, understanding that mastery lay in the simple, continuous effort, not in the final achievement. His greatest teaching became his quiet, unadorned presence, a mirror reflecting the impermanence of all things, including the ego. Cultivating rest through self-acceptance. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet darkness, let the concept of humility guide you toward a profound rest. The exhausted mind often labors under the illusion that it must be perfect to be worthy of peace. It equates failure with unworthiness. Humility offers the antidote. You are worthy of peace, not because you succeeded perfectly, but because you are a suffering being who is trying. Let go of the need to impress the imaginary judge in your mind. Let go of the need to rewind the clock and fix the mistake. That time has passed. The lesson has been delivered. Your only task now is to absorb the humility that comes with the knowledge and to rest completely. Allow your entire body to become heavy, sinking into the mattress. Release the tension in your chest and jaw, the physical manifestations of unspent pride and judgment. There is deep,
sustaining comfort in knowing that you are fundamentally okay, even in your flaws. You are a work in progress, a student of the universe, and the universe loves its students, especially when they are learning hard lessons. Rest in the dust, where the seeds of true wisdom are waiting to sprout. Be humble, be quiet, be at peace. Part 9. The final rest, turning the lesson into sleep. As the
stories settle in your mind and the wisdom of humility softens your spirit, we arrive at the final, most crucial step, transforming the intellectual understanding of failure into the physical and mental reality of deep rest. The ultimate goal of this journey is not just to learn about setbacks, but to release the tension they create in the body and mind. The practice now is to let your body be the Buddha, the fully awakened one, present and still, and let the mind simply follow its profound silence. The Buddha's teaching on failure, as we have explored, revolves around the Four Noble Truths, which can be applied directly to the cycle of disappointment. Truth of suffering. Failure is painful. It causes mental anguish. Truth of origin. The suffering from failure arises not from the event itself, but from the clinging to a desired outcome. The second arrow. Truth of cessation. The suffering stops when the clinging and the attachment to the fixed, perfect self stops. Truth of the path. The way to stop suffering is through the cultivation of the Eightfold Path, which, in the context of rest, means right mindfulness and right concentration. We will use this path now to gently guide you into sleep, ensuring that the heavy weight of the day's failures is left entirely behind. The practice of right mindfulness, the body scan of release. In the quiet of your bed, let your attention become a soft, warm light that moves through your body. The body holds the memory of every harsh thought, every anxious moment, and every failure-induced tension. We will systematically ask these parts to let go. Release the face. Failure often tightens the mask we show the world. Soften your forehead, letting go of the need to look worried or serious. Let your eyelids droop heavily. Relax the muscles around your mouth and jaw. The jaw is where we hold the tension of arguments, unspoken criticism, and resistance. Let the teeth slightly separate, allowing the jaw to become slack and heavy. Breathe in softness. Breathe out all facial tension. Release the shoulders and chest. This is the seat of the burden. The weight of the world, or the weight of the mistake, settles here. Imagine a heavy cloak of disappointment draped over your shoulders. With your next breath, gently shrug your shoulders up toward your ears. Hold the tension for a moment, and then let them fall completely, dropping far away from your neck. Feel the chest soften. Release the need to guard your heart against the memory of rejection or loss. Release the hands and feet. These are the instruments of your action, and they often hold the memory of frustrated effort. Curl your hands tightly into fists, feeling the tension build in the fingers, palms, and wrists. Now, slowly unfurl them, allowing the hands to become completely limp and open. Do the same with your feet. Curl your toes tightly, feeling the tension, and then release, allowing the feet to flop outwards, heavy and inert. These hands and feet have done their work for the day. They deserve rest. The practice of right concentration, sama samadhi, the breath anchor. Now that the body is relaxed, we anchor the drifting mind to the simple, present reality of the breath. Do not try to control your breath. Simply be the gentle witness. Notice the sensation, the coolness of the air entering your nostrils, the warmth of the air leaving your mouth, the gentle rise and fall of your belly. As you focus on the breath, thoughts of the day's failure, the missed opportunities, the harsh words, the regrets will inevitably arise. Do not fight them. Do not judge them. Recognize them as just passing thoughts, mere mental phenomena, the last ripples of a stone dropped in the water long ago. When a thought of failure arises, internally label it gently. Thinking, regret, planning. And then, without engagement, return your entire attention to the physical sensation of the breath. Use the following mantra, breathing slowly and deeply. Inhale. I am learning. Exhale. I let go. Let the word go be the final, decisive action of your day. You are letting go of the identity of failure, the expectation of control, and the illusion of permanence. Everything is passing. The mistake passed. The day passed. The need to fix it right now must also pass. The final conclusion. The unconditioned peace. The Buddhist path to handling failure is to understand that peace is not a reward for success, but the unconditioned state of reality when all grasping has ceased. You do not need to earn your peace. You only need to stop resisting the moment you are in. Tonight, there is nothing left to achieve, nothing left to fix, and no one left to impress. Your entire being is a continuous, evolving process, a successful practice, regardless of the outcome. The body is heavy. The breath is gentle. The mind is quiet. Sink deeper now. Let the last remaining tension drain away through your heels and into the earth. The earth will hold your burdens tonight. Rest in the knowledge that every failure has been transformed into a seed of wisdom. That is the true success. The practice of the unburdened mind, leaving the scorecard behind. To achieve truly deep, restorative sleep, we must address the mind's compulsive habit of scorekeeping. After a failure, the mind often stays awake, meticulously tallying the losses, rehearsing the mistakes, and calculating the required penance or effort for the next day. This constant mental activity prevents the necessary shutdown of the nervous system. In the Buddhist understanding, this scorekeeping is a form of clinging to views and clinging to rites and rituals. The need for perfect performance or perfect atonement. The mind believes that by reviewing the failure, it is somehow protecting you from future mistakes. In reality, it is merely keeping the wound fresh. Your practice now is to visualize the act of deliberately putting away the day's scorecard. Imagine a simple, rough ledger containing a list of everything that went wrong. The email wasn't sent. The money was lost. The word was spoken in anger. The goal was missed. Now, visualize yourself gently taking that ledger, placing it on a distant shelf, and covering it with a clean white cloth. The message to your subconscious must be clear. The accounting is finished for the day. The information has been recorded, the lesson learned, but the emotional toll is closed. The suffering ceased. There is no further need to calculate, worry, or regret until the light of dawn brings clear, rested eyes. This deliberate mental act creates a clear boundary between the active, striving ego of the day and the peaceful, restorative awareness of the night. Do not allow the demands of tomorrow to invade the sanctuary of tonight. The effort you save by resting fully is far more valuable than any amount of anxious, exhausted mental rehearsal. The ultimate failure is the failure to rest. In the quiet hours before dawn, the Master Kun, a figure known for his rigorous yet balanced discipline, taught his students a paradoxical lesson. The ultimate failure is the failure to rest when rest is due. Kun explained that the body and mind are like a bow. If the bow is constantly kept taut, ready to fire, the wood loses its resilience, its integrity. When the moment of true need arrives, the bow will snap. Rest is the act of unstringing the bow. It is not idleness, it is maintenance. It is an active, necessary part of the continuous practice. A student who refuses to rest after a failure, believing they must punish themselves with sleepless work or anxious thought, is, in fact, guaranteeing future failures, because they are guaranteeing a compromised state of mind and body. Tonight, you must view rest as an essential, ethical action, an integral part of your future success. By giving your body and mind the deep peace they require, you are cultivating the clear judgment, patience, and stable focus needed for the middle way tomorrow. Embrace the permission to do absolutely nothing. Your only task now is to be heavy, quiet, and present with the sensations of comfort and stillness. Final visualization: the unconditional openness of space. Now, deepen your relaxation with a final visualization, drawing on the Buddhist concept of emptiness, not as nothingness, but as unconditional openness. Imagine you are floating in vast, dark, silent space. This space is utterly peaceful, perfectly still, and infinitely deep. There are no scorecards, no deadlines, no judges, and no failures in this space. Your body is completely weightless. Now, bring the memory of a recent failure, a sharp disappointment, into this vast space. See the failure as a small, brightly colored object floating gently before you. Notice how small and insignificant it is against the backdrop of infinite space. The failure is merely a temporary object, a fleeting cluster of conditioned thoughts and events. It has no permanent reality. It is not you. Watch it float. See its colors fade slightly as it moves away from you, dissolving back into the boundless, peaceful darkness. The space itself, the emptiness, is your true nature. It is unconditioned and unaffected by the transient objects that pass through it. The failure passed through you, but it did not leave a permanent mark on your fundamental, peaceful nature. Rest in that space now. Rest in your unconditional peace. You are whole, you are complete, and you are entirely free from the burdens of the day. Let your breathing become silent and deep. Every inhale is a replenishing of peace. Every exhale is the final release of all that is done. May your heart be soft. May your mind be clear. May your sleep be profoundly peaceful. Part 10. The Healing Power of Self-Metta After Failure. Welcome back to Lotus Whisper, as we continue our deep dive into using failure as a catalyst for growth. Tonight, we turn our attention to the essential practice of loving kindness, metta, specifically directed towards oneself when the heart is heavy with disappointment. This is often the most neglected and yet most vital step in turning a setback into a spiritual triumph. When we fail, the instinctive reaction of the ego is to turn inward and attack the self. We unleash a torrent of harsh, critical language. I am stupid. I should have known better. I am a failure. This self-criticism is the ultimate second arrow, guaranteeing suffering. The Buddhist path offers metta as the antidote, a radical, deliberate act of self-acceptance and unconditional warmth, precisely at the moment you feel least deserving of it. The parable of the wounded monk. Imagine a young monk named Kaito, who was deeply devoted to the practice of walking meditation. Kinhin. He walked the circumambulation path around the temple grounds daily, striving for perfect stillness and concentration. His greatest pride was his balance and grace. One day, while meditating on a very narrow, moss-covered section of the path, Kaito, distracted by a flash of pride in his own skill, lost his footing and fell hard, badly twisting his ankle. The pain was immediate and intense, but worse than the physical pain was the crushing shame. He had fallen in public, proven his imperfection, and interrupted his own sacred practice. As he lay there, his first thoughts were vicious. You fool, you clumsy idiot. 3 years of practice, wasted by one moment of arrogance. You are weak. You deserve this pain. This inner judge was relentless. An older, revered master, having seen the fall, hurried to Kaito. The master did not rush to judge the technique or lecture on the importance of sati, mindfulness. Instead, the master knelt beside Kaito, his hands gently supporting the monk's head. The master spoke softly. Kaito, the path is wet, and the mind is often turbulent. The mistake you made was external. Suffering you are causing yourself is internal. The ankle needs medicine and careful wrapping. Your heart needs metta. The master continued, Now, do not treat your mind like an enemy that needs beating. Treat it like this ankle, wounded, painful, and requiring the utmost tenderness. What would you say to a friend who fell? Kaito realized that if his best friend had fallen, he would immediately offer comfort, assistance, and encouragement. He would never call his friend a fool or an idiot. Yet he directed that exact cruelty towards the person who needed kindness the most, himself. This is the essence of self-metta after failure, separating the compassionate response we naturally offer others from the cruel judgment we reserve only for ourselves. The path to healing, the master taught, began with the gentlest acknowledgement. May I be free from self-blame. May I accept this moment of imperfection. May I heal quickly. Metta is not a denial of the mistake. Kaito's ankle was still broken. His fall was real. But metta is the refusal to compound the initial pain, the first arrow, with the secondary, optional suffering of self-hatred, the second arrow. It is the radical acceptance of your own flawed, striving humanity. The practice, directing warmth inward. Tonight, as you lie in comfort, bring that recent disappointment gently into your awareness. Don't push it away. Don't analyze it further. Just hold the feeling of disappointment. Acknowledge the pain. Recognize the exact location where the feeling of failure settles in your body, the knot in your stomach, the tension in your chest, the burning in your throat. Acknowledge this feeling with the softest possible internal whisper. Ah, there is pain. I am suffering right now. Turn with tenderness. Now, consciously shift your energy. Imagine a warm, golden light surrounding your heart. This light is pure kindness, forgiveness, and unconditional acceptance. Offer the phrases. Use the traditional metta phrases, directing them specifically to the part of you that feels unworthy or failed. May I be safe from internal harm. May I stop hurting myself with my thoughts. May I be happy. May I find peace despite this outcome. May I be healthy. May my mind and body be restored to balance. May I live with ease and acceptance. May I forgive myself for being imperfect. Repeat these phrases slowly, gently, breathing the warm light into the areas where the shame resides. Let the unconditional acceptance wash away the sharp edges of self-criticism. The ultimate purpose of metta in this context is to rebuild the inner resources necessary for the next attempt. You cannot learn effectively, you cannot innovate, and you cannot persevere if your core self is depleted by continuous self-attack. Self-compassion is the stable foundation upon which the next, wiser effort will be built. The master left Kaito with one final instruction. The perfection of the walking path is a teaching for the future. The compassion you show yourself right now is the foundation of the path itself. Go slowly. Be gentle. Practice healing, not self-punishment. Let your mind rest in the quiet kindness you have offered yourself. Allow the pain of the wound to be just pain, not proof of failure. You are worthy of peace simply because you exist. Deepening the practice, the universal nature of imperfection. To fully solidify the practice of self-metta, it is essential to dismantle the myth of personal uniqueness and failure. We often feel isolated in our setbacks, thinking, I am the only one who has failed this spectacularly. This isolation fuels the shame. The metta practice helps us dissolve this isolation by recognizing the universal nature of imperfection. The very first teaching of the Buddha emphasizes dukkha, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of existence, which includes failure, disappointment, loss, and imperfection. These are not glitches in your personal programming. They are the fundamental conditions of reality, anicca, impermanence. Every single being, from the humblest insect to the most enlightened master, has experienced moments that did not meet their expectations. Therefore, when you practice self-metta by saying, "May I be free from suffering," you are not making an exception for yourself. You are simply extending the basic kindness due to all beings, including the being inside your own skin. The koan of the crushed flower. A student once brought his master a beautifully cultivated flower, a rare bloom he had spent months nurturing. Just as he presented it, a clumsy novice bumped his arm, and the flower fell, crushed beneath a stone. The student immediately began to weep, shouting curses at the novice, and worse, at himself for being so careless. The master calmly picked up the crushed flower. "Look," he said, "the flower is damaged. This is sorrow, dukkha. Now tell me, is the flower still the Buddha nature?" The student, through his tears, said, "Master, its form is broken." The master nodded. "But its essential nature, its capacity to bloom, its connection to the earth, is that broken?" The mistake of the novice is one thing. Your cruelty toward yourself for being the keeper of the flower is another. If you cannot offer metta to the broken flower, how can you offer it to your broken heart? The form is temporary. The capacity for kindness is eternal. The student realized that the essential goodness of his effort, the nurturing of the flower, remained, even after the physical result was destroyed. His internal capacity for compassion was not diminished by the external accident. He learned to detach the event from the essence. Practical steps for cultivating metta in moments of critique. Whenever the harsh inner critic flares up, immediately interrupt the monologue with a metta sandwich. Softener. Acknowledge imperfection. This is a painful moment. All beings make mistakes. Universalizing the experience. Core kindness, the metta phrase. May I be kind to myself right now. May I accept this flaw. Direct infusion of warmth. Refocus. Right action. Now, what is the smallest, kindest action I can take next? Shifting from judgment to gentle, balanced effort. This practice is not about self-pity or avoiding responsibility. It is about creating a stable, emotionally healthy internal environment, a well-lit workshop where true, clear-eyed analysis of the failure, the learning, can actually take place. You cannot see clearly in the chaotic fog of self-hatred. Only self-compassion provides the necessary calm. Tonight, let this deep sense of unconditional kindness settle over you. Forgive the mistakes of the day. Forgive the flaws that were revealed. Forgive the pain you caused yourself. Extend the same gentle, patient love to yourself that you would instinctively offer your most cherished friend. This act of forgiveness is the ultimate spiritual liberation. Let your body rest, knowing that in this rest, you are performing the most profound act of self-metta. You are unstringing the bow and preparing the mind for a balanced, clear, and compassionate tomorrow. Sleep now, enveloped in the quiet, golden light of your own loving kindness. Part 11. Skillful means. Upaya. The failure as blueprint. Welcome back to Lotus Whisper. As we approach the culmination of our reflections on failure and growth, we dedicate this segment to skillful means, one of the most dynamic and practical concepts in Mahayana Buddhism. Upaya is the intelligence that transforms abstract wisdom, like impermanence and non-self, into concrete, effective action. When applied to setbacks, Upaya views failure not as a roadblock, but as a highly detailed blueprint for the next attempt. The core teaching here is simple. Wisdom diagnoses the failure. Skillful means designs the solution. The former tells you why the pot cracked. The latter tells you how to mix the clay differently next time. The parable of the broken bridge. In a village nestled deep in the mountains, there was a master builder named Satoru. Satoru was renowned not because his bridges never failed, but because he was the only builder whose repaired bridges lasted for centuries. Satoru's first major project was a magnificent wooden bridge intended to span a rapid mountain gorge. He had studied the finest texts and employed the best timber. But within a year, an unseasonal flash flood tore through the gorge, destroying the central support and washing away the bridge. Satoru was devastated, seeing his reputation and his effort ruined. Most villagers saw the failure as a sign of bad luck or poor planning. Satoru, however, did not rush to blame the river, the wood, or his workers. He understood the wisdom of anicca, impermanence. The river's nature is to flow and sometimes rage, and the wisdom of karma. The failure was the precise, impersonal result of the river's conditions acting upon his specific design flaws. Instead of retreating in shame or rebuilding with blind haste, Satoru began the practice of upaya. For 1 full year, he did nothing but study the wreckage and the river. Diagnosis. Prajna. He measured the exact height and force of the floodwaters on the gorge walls, the first arrow. He diagnosed that his failure was not due to the weakness of the wood, but the placement of the support column. He had placed it in the river's deepest, most turbulent current. Design. Upaya. He realized that the skill was not in making a stronger support, but in making no support in that turbulent area. His new blueprint involved 2 long, reinforced arches anchored high on the gorge walls, allowing the river to rage beneath them without ever touching the structure. Satoru's second bridge was weaker in isolation. It used less material in the center, but it was infinitely more skillful because it was in harmony with the conditions of the river. He used the failure not just as a lesson, but as the precise, necessary information that allowed him to evolve his method. He taught his students, "A fool sees failure as an end. A wise one sees failure as the only truly honest piece of feedback you will ever receive. The world never lies about what works and what doesn't. Your mistake is the very clay you need to shape the new method." Applying upaya to personal setbacks. When we experience a failure, a job loss, a relationship breakdown, a collapsed project, our first mistake is often to panic and revert to generic solutions. "I'll just try harder. I'll spend more hours. I'll force it." Upaya rejects this brute force approach, insisting instead on precise, intelligent recalibration. Steps for skillful recalibration. Isolate the flaw, the broken support. What was the specific point of failure? Was it in intention? Were you secretly motivated by pride, fear, or a desperate need for approval? Method. Was your technique outdated, rushed, or unsuited for the current conditions? Conditions. Did you fail to account for external factors, the flash flood of the market, the emotional state of a partner, the complexity of a technology? Observe the energy drain, the turbulent current. Where did you spend excessive, wasted effort? Satoru wasted effort trying to secure a support in the deepest current. Where are you trying to force an outcome in an area that is fundamentally resistant to your control? The skillful response is to withdraw energy from the turbulent area and re-anchor it where you have leverage, the high stable gorge walls. Design for harmony, not force. The arch. Your new action should not be about fighting the conditions, but working with them. If you lost a client because they needed constant attention, a turbulent current, the skillful means might be to find a client who values independence, or to delegate the attention-giving task, working with the condition. This is the active, engaged, and supremely hopeful side of Buddhist wisdom. It teaches that the failure itself is not the problem. The problem is the unskillful response to the failure. Tonight, let this wisdom settle over you. The anxiety that keeps you awake often comes from the fear of repeating the mistake. Upaya is the quiet assurance that you now possess the precise knowledge to change the outcome. Your failure is no longer a source of shame. It is your personal, highly customized blueprint for skill. Relax into this confident understanding. You do not need frantic effort. You need clear analysis. The wisdom of your past fall is your anchor for a graceful and skillful future. The ethical imperative of skillful means. The concept of upaya is not just a personal tool for efficiency. It carries a deep ethical weight, particularly relevant to how we handle public failure. In the Mahayana tradition, upaya is inseparable from the bodhisattva ideal, which is dedicated to alleviating the suffering of all beings. The skillful means employed must always be rooted in compassion. When Satoru, the builder, redesigned his bridge, his primary motivation was not just to restore his reputation, but to ensure the people on both sides of the gorge could safely access food and resources. The technical flaw, the structural failure, had created widespread suffering, the inability to cross. His skillful correction was therefore an act of collective metta. This teaches us that when our personal efforts fail, we must look beyond our own shame and recognize the ripple effects of that failure on the world around us. Failure as a call to service. Did your business fail? Upaya asks, what part of the market's needs did you fundamentally misunderstand? How can you now use the wisdom gained from your loss to help others avoid the same pitfall? Failure as a lesson in interdependence. Did a relationship fail? Upaya asks, what skillful communication techniques could have prevented harm? How can you apply that hard-won knowledge to foster stronger, more empathetic connections in your community? The skillful means here is the detachment from personal ego combined with an intense focus on alleviating suffering. The failure transforms from an embarrassing personal mark into a piece of valuable, shared data that can benefit the collective. Your willingness to analyze your mistake honestly becomes a gift to others. The ultimate application of Upaya is recognizing that the most skillful action you can take right now is to fully restore your capacity to act, which means resting completely. To lie awake consumed by anxiety is the unskillful choice. It prevents the necessary mental clarity for the next day's complex challenges. Skillful rest is a precise action. It requires you to consciously switch off the planning and analyzing mind, trusting that the lessons gleaned from the failure are now safely stored in your subconscious, ready to be accessed when the time for action returns. Tonight, practice the Upaya of profound stillness. You have diagnosed the failure. You have received the blueprint. Now, you must allow the intelligence of your body to rebuild the structure. Let the final anxieties about tomorrow's workload or yesterday's mistakes flow down like water around the solid, unmoving arch of your present awareness. You are safe. You are wise. You are skillful. Rest in the knowledge that your greatest act of skill is often the simplest. Letting go. Part 12. Patience and perseverance, Khanti and Virya, the long cycle of growth. Welcome back as we delve deeper into the wisdom that transforms setbacks into triumphs. Tonight, we focus on the twin virtues essential for enduring the long aftermath of failure, patience and perseverance. Failure often demands an immediate, radical correction. We feel we must fix everything right now to erase the shame. This urgency is driven by fear and is fundamentally unskillful. True growth, however, respects the organic process of time. It requires the deep, quiet resolve of Khanti and the steady, unwavering application of Virya. The parable of the mountain gardener. There was once a master gardener named Akemi who managed the temple's sacred bamboo grove. The grove had a long history of failing. Every time the monks tried to cultivate a specific, rare, and valuable species of bamboo, the shoots would sprout, grow vigorously for the first year, and then inexplicably wither and die in the second year. Past masters had abandoned the effort, citing bad soil or a spiritual curse. When Akemi took over, she suffered the same initial failure. The bamboo looked perfect for 12 months, filling her with pride, only to collapse in the 13th month, leaving her with a profound sense of defeat. Instead of quitting, Akemi applied the lessons of Khanti, patience, and Virya, perseverance, guided by right understanding. Virya, steady effort. She did not frantically try 10 different remedies. Instead, she continued the exact same planting and watering ritual for the next 2 years, but with a slight, mindful adjustment. She added a very small amount of calcium-rich ash to the soil, a process so subtle that it seemed insignificant. Khanti, patience. She resolved that she would wait 5 full years for a result, completely detaching her emotional well-being from the year-to-year outcome. She accepted that the bamboo's growth was dictated by its own nature and the slow, deep process of soil chemistry, not by her timetable. For 3 more years, the bamboo followed the same pattern, strong growth, followed by a subtle, slow decline in the second year. The other monks saw this as continued failure and mocked Akemi's stubbornness. In the 5th year, however, the bamboo that had struggled in the previous season suddenly burst forth with unexpected, vigorous growth. It not only survived the 13th month, but continued to grow tall and strong. Akemi finally understood the lesson. The specific species of bamboo she was cultivating required a deep, internal transformation of the soil chemistry that took years to complete. The first few plantings were not failures. They were part of the process of conditioning the soil. Her early efforts, even those that seemed to result in withered stalks, were necessary steps in preparing the ground for the true harvest. Akemi taught. The bamboo taught me that a profound failure is not a final verdict. It is often proof that the roots of the problem are deep, and therefore the solution must be slow. If you rush the correction, you only treat the surface. Kanti is the willingness to wait for the deep, fundamental change. Applying patience and perseverance to your life. When you face a major setback, your immediate temptation is to try to instantly leap back to where you were before the fall. Kanti challenges this. It asks you to accept the inevitable healing time required for deep, lasting change. Patience, Kanti. This is the inner stillness that accepts the current moment of imperfection and pain. It means I accept that rebuilding trust, reestablishing a business, or mastering a complex skill will take months or years, and I will not panic during the inevitable setbacks that occur along the way. Kanti is the ability to endure suffering without allowing resentment or anger to take root. Perseverance. Virya. This is the steady, non-striving effort. It is not a furious 3-day burst of unsustainable energy, but the quiet, consistent application of the middle way adjustments identified by Upaya. It means I will show up for practice every day, even when the results are invisible. The synergy between the two is crucial. Patience prevents burnout. Perseverance guarantees movement. Without patience, perseverance becomes frantic and brittle. Without perseverance, patience becomes passive resignation. The false urgency of shame. Often the feeling that you must fix the failure immediately is fueled not by a desire for growth, but by a desperate need to silence the inner voice of shame. You rush the process to prove to yourself and others that you are not, in fact, the person who failed. Kanti is the radical refusal to let shame dictate your pace. It says, the mistake is known, the lesson is clear, the healing will take the time it takes, and I will treat myself with the same gentle patience I extend to the slow-growing bamboo. Tonight, let this understanding bring a deep calm to any lingering anxiety about the future. If you feel restless or feel the urge to start planning furiously, simply acknowledge that feeling as the residue of shame. Gently redirect your mind to the present moment. Your task now is not to hustle. It is to rest and prepare the inner soil for tomorrow's quiet, persistent effort. Rest in the faith that your efforts are never truly wasted. Like Akemi's first withered bamboo stalks, your past failures have broken up the hard, old ground of your limitations, making the soil ready for the profound, lasting growth to come. The deepening of resolve. Virya as the master's tool. To deepen our understanding, we must see virya, perseverance, energy, not merely as working hard, but as cultivating wholesome mental states. The energy of perseverance must be fueled by metta, kindness, and kanti, patience, not by guilt or desperation. This is the difference between working skillfully and working frenziedly. The historical Buddha's path to enlightenment was not instantaneous. It involved 6 years of intense practice, including early failures, such as extreme asceticism, which he later rejected as a path of excess. His final realization was achieved not through a dramatic, unsustainable burst of effort, but through a return to the balanced, sustained virya of the middle way. The 5 faculties, indriya, and perseverance. Buddhist psychology identifies 5 spiritual faculties that must be balanced for virya to be skillful. Faith, saddha, the conviction that the practice will lead to growth. This prevents the despair that ends perseverance. Effort, virya, the sustained willingness to show up every day. Mindfulness, sati, the awareness of the present moment, ensuring the effort is applied precisely where needed, the right action. Concentration, samadhi, the stability of mind to stay focused, preventing distraction by regret or future anxiety. Wisdom, prajna, the clarity to know when to adjust the effort and when to maintain stillness. When failure hits, wisdom reveals the error, and faith keeps you showing up. Patience allows you to navigate the long, empty gap between effort and visible result, supported by mindfulness of the current task. The danger of impatient despair. The greatest threat to perseverance is not exhaustion, but impatient despair, the feeling that because the result is not immediate, the entire effort is futile. This is where khanti, patience, acts as the stabilizing force. Khanti is the recognition of the lag time between planting a seed and seeing the fruit. Since the roots of profound change are deep, like the soil in a chemi's story, the lag time is often measured in years, not weeks. The willingness to accept this long cycle is the mark of a true practitioner. Tonight, as you settle into rest, let go of any self-imposed deadlines for recovery or success. You are on the right path. Your effort is being recorded in the subtle transformation of your mind and character, even if the external results are not yet visible. Allow your entire system to unstring the bow. The deep, patient, persistent work begins anew with the quiet decision to rise with clarity tomorrow. Rest now in the assurance that the most skillful action you can take is the profound act of letting go of the need for immediate results. Part 13. The root of right livelihood, sama ajiva, ethical recalibration after loss. Welcome back to Lotus Whisper, as we continue this journey of transforming setbacks into spiritual ascent. Tonight, we focus on a fundamental aspect of the Eightfold Path that addresses the practical, worldly dimension of failure, right livelihood, sama ajiva. When a career collapses, a business fails, or a project proves unsustainable, it often forces us to question not just how we worked, but why we worked, and whether the foundation of our effort was truly ethical and wholesome. Failure, in the context of right livelihood, is often the universe's decisive way of showing us that our means of sustenance, our work, was causing harm, either to ourselves, others, or the natural order. This realization provides a powerful, ethical imperative for recalibration. The parable of the tea merchant and the false fragrance. There was once a highly successful tea merchant named Kenzo. Kenzo was brilliant. His business expanded rapidly, and he enjoyed immense wealth and status. However, his success was built on a subtle deception. He mixed his rare, expensive tea leaves with cheaper, ordinary leaves that had been artificially enhanced with strong, synthetic fragrances. The illusion of quality was perfect, but the actual integrity of the tea, its natural essence, was compromised. Kenzo's business was a success of the ego, but a failure of ethics, a failure of right livelihood. One season, a massive shipment of the synthetic fragrance was contaminated, subtly altering the chemical composition. When Kenzo's final product reached the market, it caused widespread sickness among his wealthiest customers. The revelation of his deception was instant and devastating. His business collapsed overnight, his reputation was ruined, and his material wealth vanished. Kenzo was initially consumed by the dukkha of loss and shame. He cried, "I have failed. All my effort was wasted." He sought counsel from a master who lived humbly on the mountain. The master listened to Kenzo's tale of financial and social ruin, then simply asked, "Kenzo, tell me, what truly failed? The bank account failed, yes, but did your livelihood fail, or did your deception fail?" Kenzo was stunned. He realized that the failure was not the result of bad luck or poor market timing. The failure was the inevitable ripening of the unwholesome seed he had planted, the seed of deceit. The sickness was merely the precise karmic feedback loop showing him the actual quality of his successful livelihood. The master explained the principle of right livelihood. Right livelihood means sustaining your life without harming life. Your livelihood was built on avidya, ignorance and greed. The failure of your business was actually the success of the moral law. The destruction of your empire was the only way for you to see the true nature of your foundation. The loss of the outer success is the gain of inner clarity. The ethical recalibration. When a failure is deep and fundamental, sama ajiva, compels us to ask difficult but essential questions. Was my intention wholesome? Did I pursue this work primarily out of greed, attachment to fame, or a desperate need to prove my worth, mana? Or was the intention rooted in service, contribution, and genuine love for the craft, metta? Did my work cause unnecessary harm? Did I compromise my health, self-harm? Did I exploit others, social harm? Did I deceive customers, ethical harm? Does this work honor my true nature? Am I forcing myself into a role that requires me to act against my deepest values just to sustain myself? If the failure arose from a foundation of unwholesome intention, then the ethical recalibration is not about getting back on the horse, but about changing the vehicle entirely. The wisdom of the failure lies in its ability to force a pivot toward a more congruent, sustainable, and wholesome way of earning a living, one that aligns the outer action with the inner values. Kenzo eventually became a simple, honest farmer, growing natural tea with care and integrity. His income was modest, but his mind was peaceful. He realized that his true livelihood was found not in the size of his bank account, but in the wholeness of his day-to-day work. Your failure may be the gift that frees you from a life that was spiritually bankrupt, even if it was materially rich. It is the permission slip to choose a path that truly honors your ethical self. Tonight, let go of the shame associated with professional loss. Instead, embrace the clarity of the ethical lesson. Rest in the knowledge that your deepest value lies not in your job title or your net worth, but in the integrity of your being. The contemplation of sustainable effort and inner harmony. The concept of sama-ajiva extends beyond simply avoiding harmful trades, like weapons, slavery, or intoxicants. In the context of our modern, hyper-competitive world, it also encompasses the sustainability of one's energy and spirit. Right livelihood is about finding a way to sustain yourself without burning out your inner resources. A successful career that requires you to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind is, by the Buddhist definition, still a form of unwholesome livelihood. It is self-harm. Therefore, a failure that removes you from such a situation is a deep, profound act of self-preservation, a successful intervention by the natural law of consequences. Failure as a reset of inner economy. Recognize the debt. Failure often forces us to realize we were living beyond our emotional and physical means, accruing a deep debt of stress and unwholesome karma. The wholesome pivot. Right livelihood encourages a pivot toward an inner economy based on sufficiency rather than excess. It asks, how little do I need to earn to live simply and wholesomely? By reducing the need for excess, you reduce the pressure on your professional life, which in turn reduces the likelihood of ethical compromises and burnout-induced mistakes. The balance. Of virya and khantis in work, a wholesome livelihood naturally incorporates the middle way. It avoids the extreme of fanatical, relentless work, virya, unbalanced by prajna, and the extreme of lazy indulgence. It aims for a steady, sustainable pace that honors the body's need for rest and the mind's need for reflection. This contemplation is especially critical in the dark hours of the night. If you lie awake, consumed by anxiety about how you will make a living, remind yourself that the first act of right livelihood is self-care. You cannot ethically and effectively contribute to the world if you are running on empty. The role of clarity in ethical choice. The failure of Kenzo's tea business was painful, but it offered an undeniable clarity. The deceptive fragrance was the problem. Our own failures offer the same gift. They pinpoint the exact ethical or sustainability flaw that needs correction. Let the bitterness of your professional disappointment dissolve, and in its place, allow a profound clarity of ethical choice to emerge. The loss has cleared the path for a truer way of being. Tonight, embrace the quiet, unshakable certainty that your worth is intrinsic, not derived from your income or status. Rest in the integrity of your intention. The true work of finding a right livelihood for the next cycle begins with the radical acceptance of rest. Part 14. The Liberation of Non-Grasping, Anupadana, Freeing the Mind from What If. Welcome back to Lotus Whisper. As we approach the final contemplation, we focus on the liberating power of non-grasping, Anupadana, the radical refusal to cling to the past, the future, or the idea of a fixed, successful self. This practice is the spiritual antidote to the continuous mental rehearsal of failure and regret. When failure occurs, the mind immediately begins to generate a torrent of what-if scenarios. What if I had done X? What if I had said Y? This mental loop is a form of grasping, clinging to an imagined, perfect past that never existed. This grasping prevents the mind from accessing the freedom of the present moment. The Parable of the Two Boats. In the quiet dawn on a wide river, two ferrymen, brothers named Taku and Ken, were crossing. Taku, the elder, was known for his masterful skill and steady hands. Ken, the younger, was still learning. Mid-river, a sudden, powerful gust of wind caught Ken's sail unexpectedly. Ken struggled violently with the rigging, trying to force the boat back on its chosen course. In his panic and grasping, he completely lost control. The boat spun violently, and he lost a valuable net of the morning's catch overboard. Taku, who watched the whole scene, continued his own crossing with steady composure. When both reached the opposite bank, Ken was weeping, consumed by regret. "I lost the nets. I failed the crossing. I should have held the rudder tighter. Why did I not secure the sail sooner?" Taku listened, then pointed back to the wide, flowing river. "Ken," he said, "look at the water. Can you grasp the water that flowed under your boat 10 minutes ago?" "No, master," Ken replied. "It is gone." "Then why," Taku asked gently, "do you try to grasp the wind and the action that are also gone? The wind that ripped your sail and the action that caused the spin, they are no different from the water. They are gone. Yet your mind is still clinging to the moment of action, trying to rewind the river." Taku continued, explaining the liberation of non-grasping. "The event is gone. The failure, the lost net, the spinning boat, is an event conditioned by a momentary set of causes, wind, grip, sail. That specific configuration of reality no longer exists. The only thing present is the grasping. The pain Ken felt was not the lost net. The pain was the mind's violent grasping onto the idea of a perfect, controllable past and a flawless self. Upadana and anatta. The liberation, non-grasping, is the simple, radical act of releasing the mental rope. It means accepting that the river flows only forward, and your only skillful action is to secure the boat now for the current and the wind now. The anxiety that follows failure is merely the mind trying to perform an impossible task, controlling what is already past. Anupadana teaches us to let the river flow. The mistake happened. The lesson was learned. The present moment is completely clean, offering only the opportunity for a single skillful breath and a single steady hand on the rudder. Applying non-grasping to mental rehearsal. The most draining consequence of failure is the repetitive loop of mental correction. We replay the tape, trying to achieve a successful outcome in our heads. This drains the energy needed for actual future success. The practice of the unburdened mind. Identify the loop. When you catch your mind starting a what-if loop, what if I had only said X in the meeting? Gently interrupt it. Label as grasping. Internally say, grasping. This is grasping a gone thing. Return to Anupadana. Release the thought with a phrase. The past is the past. I let go of the rudder. Anchor to the present. Immediately bring your full attention to a physical anchor, the warmth of your covers, the sound of your breath, or the heaviness of your hands. This practice is the direct path to nirvana in the small moments of the night. Nirvana is not a distant heaven. It is the cessation of grasping in the present moment. When you cease grasping the perfect past, you cease the suffering of regret. When you cease grasping the desired future, you cease the suffering of anxiety. Tonight, practice the supreme skill of doing nothing with the past. Let the memory of the failure be like the sound of a distant bell. You hear it, but you do not follow it. Rest in the vast, open silence of non-grasping. The freedom you seek is the freedom from your own mind's need to control the uncontrollable. The final contemplation, the perfection of letting go. The entire spiritual path, in a way, is a sophisticated training in the art of Anupadana. We fail continuously, not just in our external projects, but in our internal commitment to mindfulness. We grasp at success. We grasp at permanence. We grasp at a solid sense of self. Each external failure is a reflection of this internal relentless grasping. The greatest masters, the most liberated beings, are not those who never fail, but those who are the quickest and most complete in letting go of the failure and its resultant shame. They treat every setback as a momentary fluctuation in the stream of conditions, acknowledge the feedback, and immediately return their entire energy to the present task. The failure to let go is the true stagnation. Stagnation of energy. Grasping onto a failure binds massive amounts of vital mental energy into a closed, destructive loop of rumination and regret. Stagnation of learning. You cannot learn a new skill while staring angrily at the broken tool. Anupadana frees your vision to clearly see the tools you have now and the conditions you face now. Stagnation of identity. Clinging to failure solidifies the identity of I am a failure. Letting go reestablishes the identity of I am the awareness that witnessed a moment of imperfection, an unconditioned, pure state of being. Tonight, you are not defined by the net you lost, the words you spoke, or the money that slipped away. You are defined only by your current capacity for peace and release. That capacity is infinite and unconditioned. Let the river flow. Let the wind blow. Let the past fade into the vast, silent space of non-grasping. There is nothing left to secure. The work of the day is done. Rest now in the deepest freedom, the freedom from yourself. The neurobiology of grasping and release. The Buddhist practice of non-grasping, Anupadana, is supported by modern understanding of the brain. When we ruminate on failure, the what-if loop, we are activating the default mode network, DMN, the network associated with self-referential thought, future planning, and regret. This DMN is highly energy intensive and, when overactive, as it is during periods of anxiety or stress, it prevents the brain from entering the restorative states necessary for deep rest and creative problem solving. Anupadana is the deliberate disengagement from the DMN. By gently labeling the thought, grasping, regret, and returning the focus to the breath, an action associated with the present moment network, you are actively rewiring your brain. You are teaching your nervous system that the past failure is a piece of data to be processed by the prefrontal cortex during waking hours, not a crisis that demands continuous activation of the emotional centers, the amygdala, during the night. The ability to let go is not merely a philosophical concept. It is a neurological skill that must be practiced diligently. Every time you consciously release the urge to rewind the river of the past, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with peace and presence, and you allow the energetic and chemical resources of your brain to reset. The failure of will versus the failure of wisdom. Often we mistake our failure to fix the past as a failure of will. We believe we should try harder to regret, plan, or worry our way out of the hole. Anupadana teaches us that the real failure is the failure of wisdom, the lack of insight into the impermanent nature of the past. The will must be directed forward, toward the present action, virya. The will should not be directed backward, toward the impossible task of changing a gone thing. When you attempt to grasp the past, your will becomes trapped, spinning tires in the mud of regret. The liberation comes when you redirect your will entirely towards the present moment. I will now choose to feel the heaviness of my legs. I will now choose to hear the sound of the air. I will now choose to release the tightness in my stomach. These simple acts of present moment will are the true expression of Anupadana. They sever the link between your current energy and the non-existent past. The role of the body as the anchor of release. The body is the most reliable anchor for non-grasping because it exists only in the present moment. The pain from your past failure, the shame, the tightness, the regret, might be triggered by a past event, but it is experienced only in the present body. Your practice of anupadana must therefore be profoundly physical. You are not just letting go of a thought, you are letting go of the physical tension that holds the thought in place. Locate the grasping. Identify where in your body the memory of the failure is currently manifesting, e.g., a clenched jaw, tight shoulders, or a knot in the solar plexus. Breathe into the space. Direct your breath gently into that area, imagining the warm, releasing oxygen, softening the physical grasp. Release the muscles. Consciously instruct those muscles to stop doing the work of holding the past. Jaw, you may rest. Shoulders, you may drop. This physical release is the final, tangible proof that the event is over. The moment the body relaxes its grip, the mind finds it impossible to maintain the illusion of control over the past. The weight of the world, which the ego insisted on carrying, gently drops away, resting in the unconditioned nature. The final stage of anupadana is to rest in the realization of the unconditioned, the part of you that is inherently untouched by the conditioned world of failure and success. Imagine a vast, crystal-clear lake. The events of your life, the triumphs, the failures, the regrets, are merely reflections on the surface of the lake. They are temporary ripples, clouds, or passing boats. The reflections can be intense and chaotic, but they do not change the fundamental nature of the water itself. The water remains deep, clear, and calm beneath the surface. You are the water, not the reflection. Anupadana is the choice to identify with the deep, calm, unconditioned essence, the water, rather than the transient surface events, the reflections. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the illusion of the surface completely dissolve. Sink into the deep, unmoving, unconditional peace that is your true nature. The failure was a ripple on the surface. Your peace is the eternal depth beneath. Rest in the certainty that nothing that happened today or yesterday can diminish the essential, unconditioned wholeness of your being. You are free. Part 15. Synthesis and Awakening. The Practice of the Middle Way. Welcome to the final contemplation of our series. Tonight, we synthesize the wisdom of the previous 14 parts into a single cohesive practice, the middle way, Majjhima Patipada. The middle way is not merely a compromise between extremes. It is the skillful balance that allows us to engage fully with life, perseverance, effort, analysis, while simultaneously holding the core truths of life, impermanence, non-self, non-grasping. The failure you experienced, viewed through the lens of the middle way, is neither a crushing tragedy, the extreme of self-hatred, nor a meaningless event, the extreme of denial. It is precise feedback that must be met with balanced, skillful action. The middle way, balancing the extremes of response. When failure occurs, the mind tends to swing violently between two extremes, self-loathing and denial. The extreme of self-loathing rigor is the belief that the failure proves you are fundamentally flawed. This response demands punishment, overwork, and relentless self-criticism. The antidote offered by the middle way is self-metta and khanti, loving kindness and patience. You must meet the pain with tenderness, not punishment, understanding that spiritual and emotional repair requires a slow, gentle hand and the acceptance of imperfect human nature. The extreme of denial/resignation is the belief that the failure was entirely external and meaningless. This response leads to passive acceptance, denial of personal accountability, and intellectual stagnation. The antidote offered by the middle way is prajna and upaya, wisdom and skillful means. You must conduct clear, rigorous analysis of the causes without moral judgment, seeking the conditions that created the result rather than the fault that created the blame. The middle way is the path of unflinching honesty, combined with boundless compassion. You look at the flaw without flinching, this is wisdom, and you treat the person who committed the flaw, yourself, with unconditional kindness. This is compassion. This balance creates the stable ground for true, lasting growth. If you find yourself gravitating toward the self-loathing extreme, you must actively apply metta by saying, "I am suffering now. May I be kind to myself." If you gravitate toward the denial extreme, you must actively apply prajna by asking, "What specific, unskillful choice did I make, and how can the design be changed?" Synthesis: the 7 factors of awakening applied to failure. The entirety of our journey, from the initial shock of failure to the final rest, can be framed by the 7 factors of awakening. Sata Bojjhanga, which offer a direct, practical sequence for handling any setback. Mindfulness, Sati, the moment of acknowledgement. This is the first step where you apply mindfulness. The action is to acknowledge the event without immediately reacting. You create the necessary distance between the event, the first arrow, and your response, the second arrow. Internal phrase: I notice the feeling of loss or fear rising. Investigation of states, Dhamma Vichaya, the analytical phase. This is the phase of deep analysis, where you apply wisdom, prajna, and the law of karma. The action is to ask, what specific conditions, internal beliefs, flawed timing, external market forces, led to this precise result? This step dissolves the false narrative of personal failure. Energy, Viriya, the sustained resolve. This is the phase of commitment. The action is to apply energy and right livelihood. Sama Ajiva. You direct your effort toward a sustainable, wholesome goal, fueled by the clarity gained from the analysis, not by the frantic energy of shame or desperation. Joy, rapture, piti, the celebration of clarity. This is the feeling of success, found not in the outcome, but in the clarity of the learning. The action is to be grateful for the honest feedback. Joy is the emotional reward for mastering the practice of non-judgmental analysis. Tranquility, passaddhi, the calming of the body. This is the essential physical release. The action is to apply the body scan, consciously dissolving the physical tension, the clenched jaw, the tight chest, held by the memory of the failure. Concentration, samadhi, the unified mind. This is the stability that ends rumination. The action is to anchor the mind to the breath and apply non-grasping. Anupadana. You sever the mental loop of regret, labeling it as a gone thing, and return entirely to the present sensation. Equanimity, upekkha, the final balance. This is the highest form of acceptance. The action is to rest in the unshakable balance that all conditioned things, failure, success, pain, are transient. The failure passed, the success will pass, and the inherent peaceful nature remains untouched. This sequence is the complete spiritual life cycle of a failure. Notice it, analyze it, commit to a correction, celebrate the learning, calm the body, quiet the mind, and let go of the need to control the result. The final contemplation, resting in the unshakable balance. As you settle for the final time, bring your awareness to the point of perfect balance. You are not the flawed self defined by the past. You are not the successful self guaranteed by the future. You are the aware, present mind resting in the middle way. You have given your best effort. You have learned the painful essential lesson. You have extended compassion to your struggling heart. Now the practice is complete. There is nothing left to do but allow the deep, restorative rest to integrate the wisdom. Let the final anxieties dissolve like the morning mist. Let the future remain an open, unwritten scroll. Rest in the knowledge that your commitment to balance, honesty, and kindness is the only true, enduring success you will ever possess. You are free from the weight of the past. You are prepared for the action of the future. You are present, now, in perfect peace. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. Sleep in nirvana. The deepening of equanimity. Upekkha. The final factor, equanimity, is the ultimate resting place after the turbulent process of failure and growth. Upekkha is not indifference or apathy. It is a state of unshakable balance and profound non-reactivity to the changing conditions of life. It is the realization that your inner value is unconditioned. It is not dependent on the conditions of success or failure. A common reaction to failure is to lose upekkha, swinging wildly into self-pity, attachment to comfort, or frantic activity, attachment to the result. True upekkha allows you to observe the financial loss, the social judgment, or the personal disappointment with a steady, gentle eye, acknowledging the pain without letting it contaminate your core sense of well-being. The analogy of the mountain lake. Imagine your mind is a vast, deep mountain lake. External events, success, failure, praise, criticism are like various winds that disturb the surface, creating ripples, choppiness, or even waves. A mind lacking upekkha identifies with the waves and feels tossed and exhausted by the slightest breeze. The practice of upekkha, gained through navigating the cycle of failure, teaches you that you are the deep water itself, which remains perfectly still and clear, regardless of the surface disturbance. Tonight, you must consciously dissolve your identification with the waves. Sink your awareness down, below the surface level anxieties, into the deep, still, unmoving essence of the lake. Rest in the certainty that no external event, no lost job, no harsh word, no missed goal, can reach or alter the fundamental clarity and peace of your being. This radical acceptance that it is as it is, without judgment, is the final, most complete act of liberation from the suffering caused by attachment to outcome. Resting in the perfection of the middle way. The wisdom of the middle way, which guided our entire series, is encapsulated in the understanding that the most powerful action you can take right now is rest. Rest is khanti, patience. You are patiently allowing the seeds of wisdom to germinate in the soil of your subconscious mind. Rest is virya, energy. You are skillfully conserving your mental and physical energy, preparing for the next sustainable effort. Rest is anupadana, non-grasping. You are actively letting go of the mental rope, severing the bond to the past, and embracing the freedom of the present. The highest spiritual achievement is not to succeed perfectly, but to rest perfectly when the work is done. Allow your entire system to shut down with the quiet assurance that the lesson has been learned, the self has been forgiven, and the path forward is clear. Feel the support of your bed, the gentle rhythm of your breath, and the vast, unconditional silence of the night. You are safe. You are wise. You are at peace. The unconditioned nature of failure and success. To fully embrace the liberation of the middle way, we must revisit the concept of the unconditioned. In Buddhist philosophy, the conditioned world, samsara, is the realm of causes, effects, birth, death, success, and failure. Everything in this realm is characterized by impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha. Your goal, your project, your reputation, and your bank account are all conditioned phenomena. They rely on a vast network of causes to exist, and they are destined to change and dissolve. The failure you experienced was simply the natural, mechanical dissolution of a conditioned thing. It was an objective event, devoid of inherent moral meaning. The unconditioned is the realm of nirvana, the peace that is not dependent on any causes or conditions. It is the peace of the still lake, not the ripple on its surface. When we cling to the outcome of our efforts, we are seeking unconditioned peace, the joy of nirvana, in the conditioned world, samsara of success. This is the fundamental error that guarantees suffering. The failure is the universe's ultimate compassion, forcing you to turn away from the impossible task of finding permanent peace in an impermanent achievement, and guiding you back toward the unconditional peace within. Your true identity, your Buddha nature, is unconditioned. It is not something you have to earn, build, or protect with flawless performance. It is your inherent capacity for awareness, compassion, and wisdom. This nature remains whole and untouched whether your business succeeds spectacularly or collapses completely. Final practice: the seamless flow of action and rest. The ultimate mastery of the middle way is the ability to move seamlessly between two states: skillful action, daytime, engaging with the conditioned world using virya, upaya, and sama ajiva, doing your best effort with precision and ethical integrity. Unconditioned rest, nighttime, releasing the entire conditioned world, resting in upekkha, passaddhi, and anupadana, letting go of the outcome and the performance. The boundary between day and night is not just a physical transition, it is a spiritual discipline. By deliberately and completely disengaging from the conditioned world at night, you replenish the clear, unbiased energy needed to engage skillfully the next morning. If you drag the conditioned anxiety of failure into your rest, you contaminate the source of your strength. The final act of the series is a meditation on this release. Allow your mind to review the teachings of the past 15 chapters, not as a checklist of things to do, but as a gentle guide to what needs to be released. Release the expectation of permanence, anicca. Release the idea of a fixed, flawless self, anatta. Release the guilt and judgment of the inner critic, metta. Release the attachment to the specific outcome, anupadana. Release the need to fix it all tonight, khanti. Let the silence of the night affirm the most profound truth. The work is complete. The effort was worthy. The lesson has been learned. And now, the greatest skill is to rest. Sink now into the unconditioned stillness. Your journey is circular, endless, and perfect. There is no destination other than this moment of peace.